your finger out of my face, so it'll pick you up with a sieve.
Don't try it.
Oh, wait. I'll speak to you when you're well dressed.
Who are you? You unfunny, lucky, stupid.
Stop calling me a crypto-Nazi. Let's stop calling names. You in your goddamn face.
You know, it's the kind of guy I am.
Yeah, okay.
And I was saying to your wife the other night,
In 1973, metal-bending psychic Uri Geller appeared on The Tonight Show, walking into a potential trap set by host Johnny Carson and the magician and skeptic James Randi. It was one of the biggest attempted gotcha moments in television history. Let's see if Uri Geller proved to the world whether he truly had paranormal abilities.
Would you welcome, please, Uri Geller?
Now, it's important to note that there are three main players in this story. First, Johnny Carson. Johnny Carson was the king of late-night television from the 60s all the way through to the 90s. He was the most powerful man in American television. He hosted The Tonight Show for 30 years, and he was considered a kingmaker, a guy who could launch careers or stop them in their tracks.
You keep using language like that, and you're going to find yourself out of a job.
The second person is Uri Geller, an Israeli-born self-proclaimed psychic who claimed he had telekinetic and paranormal abilities. He could make watches run faster or slower, or could bend spoons, all due to willpower and the strength of his mind. Uri's supernatural abilities launched him to worldwide fame.
It happened to me in Australia. It's a very ornate.
This is also working.
Jewelry, bracelet watch.
It's working.
The second hand is sweeping along on this.
It's working. It's working.
Here's another one.
Working.
This is a Timex. Here's a Coco watch.
His first memory was of strange energy forces that happened during a childhood romp in an Arabic garden in Tel Aviv. He heard a loud, high-pitched ringing, and a silvery mass of light blotted out the sun, the implication being that it was a visit from a UFO. The third main player in this story is a man called James the Amazing Randi.
When I walked up here and I took the microphone from the stand and switched it on, you assumed this was a microphone, which it is not. As a matter of fact, this is something that about half of you, more than half of you, will not be familiar with. It's a beard trimmer, you see.
James Randi was a successful magician in the 50s through to the 60s, often performing tricks in the style of his idol, Harry Houdini. But Randi had principles. That his tricks and illusions were just that, tricks and illusions. He became a professional skeptic, devoting his life to exposing alleged charlatans who used tricks and deception to financially and emotionally defraud people.
People do this, they go to the Philippines, they spend their money, and they frankly return home, in most cases, to die. It's a little bit funny to watch it perhaps, and you say, gee, I know it's play acting. It's not play acting when they go, by the tens of thousands every year.
Now, before I get to the controversial episode, I'm going to give you some context about all the things that led to this moment. In Israel during the late 60s, Geller appeared before soldiers groups, private homes, and on the stage, showcasing his psychokinetic powers, gradually gaining impressive notoriety.
I am Bonner Cox, Executive Director of the Information Science and Engineering Division at Stanford Research Institute.
The Stanford Research Institute is one of America's largest and best-known think tanks. Its staff of highly trained specialists do research in nearly every field of human endeavour for both government and private industry, doing highly classified research for the military, counterinsurgency programs, explosives, technology, and chemical warfare. So obviously in March 1973, they brought in nightclub magician Uri Geller to analyse psychic phenomena.
This film describes a 5-week investigation conducted at Stanford Research Institute with Uri Geller, a young Israeli.
It couldn't have been any better for Uri Geller. The research led to groundbreaking conclusions. Among the data presented was evidence of his success in hidden object experiments and of his ability to influence a gram weight to weigh more and then weigh less. The Institute's summary was, as a result of Geller's success in this experimental period, we consider that he has demonstrated his paranormal perceptual ability in a convincing and unambiguous manner. We have observed certain phenomena for which we have no psychic explanation. Uri Geller was delighted.
This film gives us the opportunity to share with the viewer observations of phenomena that, in our estimation, clearly deserve further study.
This news infuriated James Randi, believing there were major flaws in the scientific testing, that the scientists in charge weren't experts in skilled deception. He said, "Scientists who fall for the paranormal go through the most devious reasoning. Fortune just squandered annually in pursuit of mystical forces that are actually just the result of a clever deceit. The money would be better investigating the Tooth Fairy or Santa Claus. There is more evidence for their reality." But the Stanford Research Institute doubled down. It insisted the researchers were definitely not duped. Whether the subject be saint or sinner, that has nothing to do with our measurements concerning the so-called psychical awareness of individuals.
And that, I believe, convinced Kit Green there's definitely something here that has to be studied.
Geller pushed any skepticism to one side. After his resounding success, he volunteered to demonstrate his powers to Time magazine editors. He appeared at the Time Life building in Manhattan and projected thoughts and images. He read minds and caused a fork to bend, all by using psychic energy. After Geller had left the room, Randi, who had been present, duplicated each of his feats, explaining that any magician could perform them.
It does take a little preparation.
There was a worldwide explosion of interest in the paranormal. Skeptics who criticised him were seen as jealous. Sure, magicians could recreate their feats using trickery, but the likes of Geller, that's different. You could also achieve them by using your mind. Randi at this point was seen as a leader of the witch hunters who are out to save society from the paranormal.
Wrong, but you wouldn't lie to anybody. We're going for a commercial break, and you can pick
Edgar Mitchell, the founder of the Institute for Noetic Science in Marin, said, "Uri Geller does things that all of us have the ability to do, but not all of us can do it as well. Randi, he makes a good living debunking, but he doesn't tackle anything real serious. Somewhere in his psyche, he knows that he's damn well wrong." That year, Geller toured Europe and worldwide, appearing on radio and television, asking audiences to also concentrate on bending silverware and starting broken clocks. In country after country, the broadcasts were followed by scores of reports of people who said they were able to do the same thing.
And people at home want your watches to start working, or if there is a radio that is broken, want it to start working. Television broken, just wanted all those broken things.
He was becoming a massive star. So did what all massive stars did. On August the 1st, 1973, he appeared on the biggest show in the country, Johnny Carson's Tonight Show. Johnny Carson was an amateur magician and loved the showmanship and trickery of magic, and he invited Geller onto his primetime show to prove his godlike abilities. He was deeply interested in seeing Uri's skills for himself. To ensure there was no deception, Carson secretly got in touch with Randi.
Mr. Geller's appearance on The Tonight Show. I got a call after they booked him to appear.
So he advised Johnny to surprise Geller with a test. Geller had been wowing audiences with the same experiment that had won over the Stanford scientists. Geller would be presented with a tray bearing 10 small aluminium film canisters. 9 were empty, and the 10th contained a steel ball. Geller's challenge was to pick the one containing the ball. Randi had already seen a film of Geller performing the trick up close, saying, Every time he was offered the tray, he tilted it slightly this way and that way. I was sure he was watching for tiny movements of the canisters that would tell him which one had the ball inside. Glue the containers to the tray so they can't move, and his powers will mysteriously fail. So then came showtime. Carson is wearing a red suit, almost symbolic of his devilish plan ahead.
And we hope we're going to see some rather astounding things tonight. Would you welcome, please, Uri Geller?
Now you can see that during the commercial break, a table has been laid out with the canisters sitting on them. Things immediately take a concerning turn when his very first words are,
"We have only met..."
It scares me.
We'll leave it up to you.
I'll try when I'll really feel up to it, okay?
He nervously turns and starts talking with Montalban, almost to avoid being asked to do something by Johnny. Carson says his staff members have drawn pictures in envelopes for Geller to guess if he'd like to do that.
When I'll feel free.
What do you think? Sure.
Things get a bit more tense. Carson explains that they have a table of cutlery, metal items, canisters provided by the Tonight Show staff, untouched by anyone else beforehand. Asks if he'd like to try something.
Would you like to try anything here?
Why don't you ask some more questions?
Want me to ask you some more questions?
Montalban, clearly uncomfortable, asks, "So, when did you discover you had this power?" And he responds by telling him about his powers as Carson anxiously lights a cigarette. When the conversation dies down, he interjects,
Are you feeling in the mood yet? Huh?
Wow.
More questions?
All right, let's...
What's the capital of South Dakota?
The big laugh from the audience is like a dagger in the heart of Yuri. He says he'll try something, the same test that he did at the SRI. 10 canisters.
So, I'll just move my hands over them, and if I'll feel for...
And one of them contains water.
He's increasingly short with Carson as he anxiously moves towards the canisters. He makes excuses to why he may have failed the test.
He is really suspicious, you know. I'm having a hard time with you.
Okay, I don't mean to be, Yuri. I really
No,
don't.
just keep looking.
We're back. How are you feeling, Uri?
Fine, I feel fine myself. You know, I'm surprised because before this program, your producer came and he read me at least 40 questions you're going to ask me.
Then Johnny bites back that it is a TV show and they don't have a lot of time. He removes another empty canister successfully. Ed McMahon, the show's sidekick, asks a question. Yuri is very abrupt and rude to him and again explains that sometimes he will fail if the energy just isn't right in the room.
I mean, it helps to a limited extent, but I'm the one who will have to choose from here, not you.
Another break is called. Comes back to Johnny with another lit cigarette, looking even more sweaty and frustrated. The atmosphere is extremely uncomfortable.
Uri was telling me you don't feel, what, strong tonight?
I
Is that...
don't feel strong.
But you can tell he's not enjoying having Yuri as a guest.
You're only telling me, well, will you try that or that?
Well, I thought that was the idea of no, I'm not trying to put you down.
Johnny ends the show with a self-deprecating joke through his gritted teeth.
Well, Uri, I don't want you to feel bad about this tonight. The monologue doesn't work every night either.
Randy's plan had worked. Under controlled conditions, Geller couldn't carry out the very tests that launched him to notoriety. He had failed in front of millions of eager viewers. For 22 minutes he was hostile, using delaying tactics, showing no sense of humour and ignoring the conventions of a talk show by not speaking to the host. Geller said of the episode, "Millions of people were watching and I had to pretend that I was happy and smiling. Inside I felt this awful depression. It was terribly embarrassing. The funny thing was, after that show, backstage, things really started happening. A medal disappeared and reappeared, objects flew around the room. Everyone was astounded." This was expected to be the end of Uri Geller, but it wasn't. He was immediately booked on the Merv Griffin Show. You see, to an enthusiastically trusting public, his failure only made his gifts seem more real. Because if he was performing the magic tricks, they would surely work every time. In 1975, Randy wrote an exposé called The Magic of Uri Geller. He then re-released it in 1982, retitled The Truth About Uri Geller. But it seemed the more attention he gave to him, the more it kept him in the public consciousness. Geller credits Randy with helping him become a psychic phenomenon, describing him as my most influential and important publicist.
To turn this power or this ability into something useful, that's when I discovered that I could earn vast amounts of money with it. And when I say money, I mean not $1 million or $2 million, but tens of millions.
In 1989, both were booked to appear together on a TV special called Exploring Psychic Powers Live.
Hi, I'm Uri Geller, and tonight what I'll be asking you to do is prepare broken watches, broken clocks, broken house appliances, buy the television set. Have them ready, because I will try to do something amazing in your own home tonight. So don't forget, have them prepared.
Amaze me? The only thing that Geller could do tonight to amaze me would be to admit that he's a trickster who has tried to deceive a lot of people.
And according to Randy, before the broadcast, Geller pulled him into his dressing room and offered to end the feud once and for all. "There's no way we are going to make peace until you level with your audiences," Randy replied. "Until you say that you are a magician like the rest of us and that you don't have supernatural powers." But Geller refused. Over the ensuing decades, there were constant court battles between them regarding defamation and loss of earnings. Their rivalry lasted over 40 years. Geller provided Randy with an arch enemy in show business, a battle royale pitting science against faith, skepticism against belief. Their vendetta would endure for decades, bringing them both international celebrity. In conclusion, the Tonight Show episode wasn't the end of Uri's career, as it was expected to be. He's still working now, and is still in the public eye. However, it did stop his career trajectory. At the time, no one had challenged a psychic so publicly, and seeing him falter made skeptics even more skeptical. Randy dedicated all of his life to protecting innocent people from fraud and manipulation, creating the James Randi Educational Foundation, offering $1 million in prize money for anyone that could demonstrate supernatural or paranormal ability under controlled conditions. Surprisingly, no one has ever won it. And when he died, aged 92 in 2020, he'd left very specific details regarding his death. "I want to be cremated, and I want my ashes blown in Uri Geller's eyes."